Okay, welcome everyone. It's wonderful to have you here, for me to learn from you and for you to learn from me. I just want to say a little bit about this series. This is the intro class to a 10-lesson series where we'll be working on spinal extension. So I'll say what that is in a moment. We're looking deeply at how to understand the pattern of extension in the spine. And we might get caught up on what that word actually means when we're using these functional words. So if you're sitting right now and you just slump a little bit, you let the middle of your back round backwards towards the chair behind you, or kind of round into a C shape. This is considered flexion of the spine, a shape we call flexion. And the opposite of that is when your abdomen gets a little longer. Your back arches is a common word that might be used. It arches forward and you start to look up. So that's called extension. And this series of lessons will hopefully come to a more clear understanding of how extension plays a role, not just in how you feel your spine, but the way that you use your limbs, the way that you locomote, the way that you use your eyes. And so again, there's these interchangeable words, spinal extension or arching the back or back bending. So all interchangeable for that same shape in the spine. What we won't be doing is just a lot of spinal extension and just spinal extension, because the spine is more complex than that. Usually when we're doing something functional throughout the day, when we're moving our spine into some kind of extension, it is alongside another spinal movement like rotation or side bending, because the spine doesn't usually just move in these like singular pure movements, unless maybe we're doing a specific yoga pose or something like that, and we're really trying to be really clear about that. So you'll experience many different approaches into spinal extension. We'll try to learn from what happens when the spine is rotating, or what happens when the shoulder blades are doing something specific, and can we still feel that spinal extension? Another thing I wanted to say is when we're arching the back, it requires the front of us to get longer. And generally in our modern culture, we've been trained to be, I could say, afraid to let our abdomens be at their full length. Most of us have felt some kind of explicit or implicit negative signals about our abdomens and how we present our bellies, our waistline. And, sometimes we're taught, often with good intentions, to really pull the belly in. But that action of pulling the belly in all of the time can have some negative ramifications, particularly on our breathing. So some of us have, most of us probably have ideas about our external experience or our external appearance of how we use our abdomen, and what we do with our abdomen directly affects what we do with our spine and the organization of our whole self, including our breathing. So we're going to explore a lesson today about becoming a little bit more functional, more comfortable, more efficient, while having a longer abdomen, an open throat, a freer chest, freer shoulders. So while you're getting your space ready, if you've just arrived, welcome. You'll be on your back today, so you want a comfortable place to lie on your back. You might want to have a really small pillow or a folded towel. Make sure that any kind of disruptions, any kind of notifications are turned off. Make sure you're warm enough, because we won't build a lot of heat. And as you're getting that ready, I'm going to take a moment to share my screen. So we're going to do a little bit of skeletal reference here. There's some skeletal points that I'll reference in the lesson that I want to make sure we're all really clear about. So I'm going to highlight the sternum. Now, in this software, the sternum is shown as 3 parts. I'm going to highlight the middle or the body of the sternum. You could stand if you'd like and actually start to touch your sternum. Feel the length of the sternum up and down. It's pretty long. It goes all the way from the soft tissue at the base of the throat, all the way down to the very top of the abdomen. So you can bring your finger all the way down until you don't feel any bone anymore and you feel that firm abdomen at the top of the abdomen. And since we are going to talk a little bit about the length of the abdomen today, we need some kind of other scalable landmark. So we're going to call the bottom of the abdomen the pubic bone. And so this is one pubic bone, one side. And I'm going to get out my little drawing tool. So what you can find on yourself is this midsection, this very kind of medial bony part. There's a right and a left, and there's a little disc between the two. So that's the lowest part of your abdomen. We'll call that the bony landmark. That tells us where the bottom of the abdomen is. So if we think, okay, all of this is the sternum. Color that in. And then you've got the pubic bone down below. We're going to sense this length, the length of that line, and how it can shorten and how it can lengthen. So those are 2 main bony landmarks. And then the other are your scapula, which many of you know, those flat kind of triangular bones on your back, which can widen and narrow, and they can move in quite a lot of ways. What we're going to get very curious about is the space between them, this kind of thoracic spine area that can be really stiff, really sticky, gives a lot of us, a little bit of discomfort at times. And if I rotate the spine like this, you can see that that's naturally the part of the spine that rounds a little bit backward, right? That's its natural way of curving. And when we drop our head and slump, it curves more in that direction. So this thoracic spine area tends to have a more challenging time doing a back bending action or a spinal extension action. So we'll really ease our way into that today. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show there for your understanding of these skeletal landmarks. So go ahead and come up to stand. And just stand for a moment with your feet comfortably a little bit apart, perhaps the width of your shoulders. Let your arms hang to your sides. And allow your gaze to just come out to the horizon. So there's no need to look at the screen. And that's sort of throughout the whole lesson. I will not be demonstrating physically. You'll just be hearing my voice. So you never really need to direct your attention to the screen. So just stand and feel supported by the floor, supported by your bones. As you stand here, see if you can make choices for comfort, not for performance in your posture. And sense the length of your spine, your image, or the way that you image the shape of your spine. Feel how your back supports you, how you sense the upper back. Does the upper back feel rounded? Or does the upper back feel like it supports a sense of opening in the chest, supports a sense of lifting in the chest, or a dropping in the chest? And when you think of your shoulders, do your shoulders have a relationship with the spine? Would you say they're kind of in front of the spine, directly to the side of your spine, or behind your spine? Might be an odd question. How much space do you sense between the shoulder blades, those triangular bones on the back? Right, this part of the thoracic spine. How much space do you feel there between the two shoulder blades? And then what about your head? Does your head feel light this evening? Does your head feel heavy, like it's compressing or pushing down into the spine? Do you sense that your head is directly on top of the spine or a little in front or behind? Great. And then keeping your feet planted with your eyes on the horizon, could you simply rotate around your axis, like you're turning to see something behind you, rotating one way and then the other, really just what's comfortable. So turning your head, your shoulders, your chest, anything else that wants to come along, but keeping your feet planted. And just go gently, rotating from side to side a few times. Noticing how far you turn easily without stretching. And as you turn, listen to the movements of your sternum. Is it moving? Is it invited to move? Do you ever feel your sternum elevate? Or does it drop a little bit as you rotate? Just see what you observe. It might do the same thing in both directions. Or one direction it might elevate a little bit and the other direction it sinks. And continue rotating slowly, turning to look right, turning to look left. And now just think about the length of your abdomen from the bottom of your sternum down to your pubic bone. Does this length change at all as you turn? Or does it stay the same? Do you get longer in the abdomen as you rotate, or do you get shorter? Okay, great. Let it be. Come to lie on your back. And to begin, just make sure you feel comfortable on your back. You can take time to experiment with how far apart you have your legs, whether your feet are standing with your knees bent, or if you prefer to have your legs long. But to start here, simply notice the weight of your body and how it's supported by the surface of the floor. Where the support seems clear to you, where it seems very reliable. And if you're comfortable with it, close your eyes. Simply begin to follow your exhale a few times. In other words, just let your attention be led, be timed by the exhale. And notice when you arrive at the end of the exhale, how you feel your inhale begins. So there's nothing rushed about this. You just simply follow the exhale. Let the breath take its time to complete. And when you arrive at the empty space at the end of the breath, feel how you initiate the inhale. Good. Now, if your legs are long, go ahead and bend your knees and stand your feet. And take a few moments to let your knees come a tiny bit inward, a little bit outward, just so you can feel where the knees can be in this very efficient place where they're standing most directly over the feet. Eventually letting that movement get smaller and smaller until you feel a stillness of your legs. Have your arms be alongside your body, somewhere on the floor. And very slowly begin to lift your arms so that your hands start to come closer to each other, as if they're going to meet somewhere over you. So very slowly, you begin to lift your arms as if the hands are going to come to meet each other in the space over your chest or over your face. Yeah, and really let it take some time. Maybe you just do the very beginning a few times. Allow your elbows to bend a little bit, so you don't have to lift your arms straight. And again, just maybe doing the very beginning a few times so you don't complete the movement right away and there's nothing rushed about it. The hands can be soft. And as you begin to bring your hands a little bit away from the ground, the elbows can bend a little bit, and you just feel how the hands move closer and closer together each time you do this. And as the hands start to get closer, see if you can find a way to slow things down so that you can begin to predict for yourself which parts of the hands will touch first, which of the fingers will actually make contact first. That's right. So you'll need to do it in such a way that the elbows, they'll bend a little bit so that it's more comfortable. Again, you're not having to lift the arms fully straight. And also, as the hands start to get closer together, you'll notice that the elbows have to lift away from the floor a little bit. So just letting everything come closer and closer, but suspend your desire to complete the action so you can really taste the sensations that tell you your hands are getting closer together. See if you can feel the movement of the upper arms relative to your chest and your ribs. See if you can feel that the closer that the hands get together, come closer together, that there's a change in your shoulder blades. The closer the hands get to each other, the more the shoulder blades have to change their arrangement relative to the spine. Yeah, good. Go ahead and let the hands actually come to touch and just notice if there's any difference between your prediction and what part of the hands actually touch each other. Good. And then just let the arms come all the way down and rest for a moment. And you might be thinking, isn't this a lesson about spinal extension? What are we doing with our arms right now? So imagine doing that one more time, perhaps a few more times, and you'll start to bring your palms together. But again, this will be a process. So start to lift your arms, exploring what you were just doing, and you might feel the pads of the fingers start to touch, and let the hands open slightly towards each other as if you could start to bring your palms together. And again, the elbows can be bent. And then you can open the arms again and just really slowly exploring this. And see if you can notice how you have to adjust your elbows if you are going to touch the palms to each other. If it was less about touching the pads of the fingers and it was more about bringing the palms together. What do your elbows do? How do your elbows have to come closer together? Or do they stay the same? And these little variations in how you orient the hands to each other, there's a representation of that in your neck, in your shoulders, in your collarbones. Good. Go ahead and let the arms and the hands come back to the floor. Let them rest on the ground. Notice your breathing. Once again, go ahead and begin to bring the hands up, bring them towards each other to touch each other in the space over the chest or over the face. But now have the idea that as the hands come into contact, as the palms start to flatten into one another, you can feel all 5 fingers take their turn to make contact with each other. And then also start to feel the elbows continue to grow closer together. As you continue to grow the elbows closer together, you might feel like you have to bring your hands more over your face. And see if it's possible to touch the inside edges of your elbows. And you don't have to give this a go right away. You can do this gradually. If it feels like you will not be able to touch the elbows together, I'll give you a few modifications for ideas. So part of the real joy in taking your time here is that as the elbows draw closer together, you can distinguish what your shoulder blades have to do in the back in order for the elbows to get closer together. It's quite difficult for the elbows to touch unless the shoulder blades do something in the back. For most people to touch the hands, it doesn't, to just touch the fingertips together, we don't have to be too adept in the shoulder blades because we're doing stuff with our hands all day long. We've sort of found a good enough way to use our shoulders when we move to take a spoon or a fork. But if you have to touch your elbows together, the shoulder blades can no longer afford to remain stiff. So begin to picture the scapula, the shoulder blades. They start to actually grow wider apart from each other on the back as the elbows approach one another. See if you can just put this together, this simple image. It's something equal and opposite happening as the elbows come closer. The shoulder blades get wider in the back. And as the shoulder blades widen, you might be able to notice certain parts of the spine or ribs actually touch the floor, maybe even sink into the floor. Or you feel the contact with the floor in this area of the spine for the first time. As the shoulder blades widen and your elbows come together, it gives you access to feel this part of your upper back on the floor. Yeah, and you can always bring your arms back down, come to that resting place. You don't have to stay with your arms right in front of you. But if you're kind of exploring there and there's not too much fatigue, remember, you want to rest before you fatigue too much. Yeah, great. Let's all rest for a moment. So the floor is this wonderful, flat, firm, uniform surface that gives us some feedback. And we're starting here so that we can just start to sensitize this area of the spine between the shoulder blades. So one more time, really slowly start to bring your fingers, then your palms, then your inner elbows to touch. And feel how the scapula widen. The muscles in the chest and the armpits may have to contract a little bit to help draw the shoulder blades around the sides of your back. So the shoulder blades really move out and away from your neck. They kind of wrap down and around underneath the armpits. Great. And once you've felt that, go ahead and rest and let the arms slowly return to the floor. And you can let your legs lengthen. Notice how your back is resting on the floor. You might notice a different distribution of yourself on the floor. Good. Now bend your knees again, stand your feet. Have your feet about shoulder distance apart. And keeping your left foot where it is, could you cross your right thigh over your left so that your right lower leg is hanging off to the left of your left lower leg? That's right. And go ahead and start to tilt or dip the knees like this to the right a few times. And really try to suspend your desire to complete the movement or to go as far as you can go. Just start to watch the process of the knees tilting. In particular, you're looking for these moments where you can feel that the weight of the legs start to exert a connection to your spine. When the legs are crossed like this, they become like one heavier weight, different than if you were just tilting one leg, right? So you're tilting two legs now, and it's almost impossible to tilt the legs to the right without the pelvis turning right away. And as soon as the pelvis starts to turn, the linkage into the spine is somewhat immediately evoked. And then because each of the vertebrae are linked to the next vertebra above, it's like a cascade of movement that begins to move up and through your back as your knees go to the right. So see if you can simply use the movement of the tilting. You're not just doing it like an exercise or anything like this, but you're using the tilting of the knees to watch the cascade travel up your spine. Notice how smooth it is. When does it feel like there are movements or linkages through the spine that feel very smooth, very gradual, sequential? And where are the places that seem to jump or where it seems to speed up? If you run into resistance, you can slow down a little bit. Or if the movement thickens, right? All of these aesthetic experiences are on the table for you to experience here and get curious about. Be okay with pausing after each movement. So as you bring the knees back to the middle, you can rest and pause. And as you do make the movement a few more times, see if you can listen to that moment when the movement of the knees has evoked a kind of turning, a rotation, or a rolling of the spine up between the shoulder blades. It's not important that you feel this right away. It's a question to help direct your attention. When the knees tilt to the right, can you start to feel this rotation, this turning in those vertebrae between your scapula? How does this movement travel or arrive in that part of the upper back between the shoulder blades? So we're trying to evoke or summon a kind of sensation to induce a rotation in this area of the spine. Okay, go ahead and come back to the middle and uncross the knees. Stand both feet about shoulder distance. So rest for a moment with your feet standing. As I was mentioning at the beginning of the lesson, this part of the spine, this area between the scapula, it tends to be kind of sticky or stiff, stubborn. So I've chosen to start this lesson with some ways that will hopefully encourage some movement there so that you can more clearly feel this area. Without changing the placement of the right foot, could you cross your left leg over your right? And before you do anything, before you tilt the legs to the left, could you sense the two shoulder blades? Sense where they are relative to your spine, the weight of them. Just taking a moment to orient yourself, have some clarity with the way your arms are resting on the floor. And then begin to tilt the knees to the left and listen to how the cascade moves up and through your back. And just notice if maybe you're a little bit more oriented to the shoulder blades than at the beginning. And it's not that we have any kind of target or goal. It's just so that your attention can start to be really whole, really global. So you can watch the movement of the pelvis as you tilt the knees. You can watch the rotation of the spine up through the spine, how that fits into the composition of the movement, and how the cascade arrives up into the space between the shoulder blades. Yeah, continue exploring how you are and just notice how your head experiences the weight of the legs tilting. And remember, we talked about the abdomen from these two skeletal points, the base of the sternum and the pubic bone, and that distance. Now, when you tilt your knees in this way, do you feel like that space of your abdomen, does it get longer or does it get shorter? Right, let that go. Uncross the legs. Let your legs go long for a moment. And please allow yourself to rest anytime that I have not yet cued a rest and you feel like you'd like one. And also allow yourself to continue to move if I cue a rest and you've gotten into something that you're really curious about. You're exploring in a way that feels really rich. Okay, bend your knees again, stand your feet, and bring your abdomen, the length of you from your sternum to your pubic bone, into your awareness. And see if you can find a tiny little movement of lengthening your pubic bone downwards or away from your head. As if you want to find a way to just bring the pubic bone a little further from your face. And then you return to neutral. And we'll do this a number of times, lengthening your pubic bone and then gradually returning where you came from. And even relaxing for a moment, shedding any of the excess effort before you begin that movement again. And as you lengthen the pubic bone, you might notice that the pelvis rolls a little bit down your mat. Your lower back may be inspired to arch a little bit or to lift slightly away from the floor. And so allow that to happen, but whatever you're feeling in the lower back, can you make it mild enough that you won't have trouble repeating this? So the movement can be small. And it's common for many of us to do this movement by just simply arching the lower back. So something you can do to be very kind to your lower back is see if you can invite this movement of moving the pubic bone away from your face or down. See if you can invite the whole spine to be involved with that. So from the very beginning of this exploration, you can have a sense of a distributed curve through your spine. The cue is to lengthen the pubic bone. That's the proposal. And then to return home. But you can invite your entire spine to help you create this image of sending the pubic bone down. It's as if the pubic bone goes all the way down between your thighs, away from your head. And there's this kind of interesting roundness in this image of moving the pubic bone. It's not just a straight line, it kind of arcs away from the head and then down towards the floor. That's right, really breathing easily. Notice if there's any movement in your head as your pubic bone moves down. Does your chin follow the pubic bone a little bit? So as you take the pubic bone a little away from the face, can you let your chin drop a little bit towards the chest? It means the back of your neck will lengthen a little bit. Okay, rest for a moment. Follow your exhale. Bring attention to the exhale. Just follow the length of your exhale. Connect your mind to the pubic bone again, to the length of your abdomen. And could you now allow for a little bit of a shortening of the abdomen? So you tuck your pubic bone, you feel yourself slightly shorten your belly so that your pubic bone actually goes in the exact opposite direction. You pull the pubic bone a little bit towards your belly button, and the abdomen will shorten a little bit. You might feel some lower belly muscles tighten. The lower back may flatten a little bit into the floor. Yeah, so it's not so big that you lift your pelvis. It's much more mild than that. Notice how you breathe as you do that. Great. And then reverse the direction. Again, start to take your pubic bone a little bit away from your head. Lengthening your abdomen. and really consciously initiating it throughout your spine, throughout your torso. So you have the sense of lifting your back in some places, of lightening your back in some places. That helps to project length into your belly and sends the pubic bone down between your thighs. And for a few moments, could you think of initiating this movement or taking this movement into your pubic bone by doing something with your sternum? So you still intend that your pubic bone lengthens, but could you somehow initiate it with your sternum? Just explore that for a moment. What would you do with that proposal? Would you lift the sternum? Would you lower it? What would you do to harmonize with the lengthening of the pubic bone? Great. Okay, let it go. And very gradually, return to bringing your hands and your elbows to touch again in the space over your chest. Feel how your scapula widen. And you're going to stay in this position where your palms and the inner elbows are touching. Keeping the elbows touching like that, almost like you're holding a postcard between your elbows. You don't want to let that postcard drop. Could you start to take the arms like this to the left? And just listen at the beginning. What moves first? Do your hands move first or do your elbows move first as you move your arms to the left? And for a lot of people, it's a lot easier to make progress with the hands. Yeah, if you lead with your hands to the left, it creates a certain kind of timing or shape in the spine. Now, what happens with that timing if you really try to lead with your elbows to go to the left? So can your elbows move to the left before your hands? Like you're passing that postcard that's between your elbows to somebody that's over to the left. And notice how a different timing comes into your ribs and your spine if you do it like this. Yeah, just to the left. Great. Let your arms come down again. This arm position can be challenging to hold. So just rest your arms for a moment. And gently bring the palms and the inner elbows to touch again with your knees bent. This time bringing the arms slowly to the right. Start by doing it without an agenda. Just simply watch what your tendency is. Do you lead from the hands or do you lead from the elbows? And then begin to lead with the hands. Feel what that's like. When you lead from the hands, it's less weight. There's not as much inertia to overcome. So then if you try now leading with your elbows, you have a postcard in your elbows and you want to pass it to somebody over to the right, you're leading with the elbows. You really have to displace or turn, shift the weight of the chest. Great. Let that rest. Let your arms come down. Sense your head for a moment and just gently roll your head a little left and right. Notice the connection you feel through the spine when you roll your head. Again, no agenda, just simply rolling the head to notice how far down through the neck into the spine is there participation. Okay, pause. Let's stay with the head for a moment. So there's a variety of ways that we can initiate rolling the head to see something to the left or to the right. Could you create a way of rolling your head so that when you roll your head to the right, the top of your head moves further than your chin? It means that it's as though you want to look towards your right foot. So you roll your head to the right in such a way that you would take the top of your head a little further than your chin, and you can even with your eyes look a little down towards your right foot. Great. And then come back to the middle. And now start to roll your head to the right so that your chin covers a little bit more distance than the top of the head. And as you're turning your face to the right, you perhaps would see something a little bit above you. If there was a ladybug on the floor to the right and a little above you. So feel how that can evoke a different use of the spine and the chest. If you lead with your chin, seeing across to the right and maybe even a little bit up. Great. Bring your head back to the middle. Stand your feet again. Gently bring your palms and your elbows to touch. And now start to take your elbows to the right. Think of leading with your elbows. You can even imagine like you have a beard on your chin, and it's as though somebody kind of gently pulls the beard to the right and a little up as you take your elbows to the right. And see how the elbows can cover quite a bit of distance, as if you wanted to see up and to the right. You might actually find yourself dragging the back of your head a little bit backward towards the place where your left shoulder was. So your head still turns to the right. That's it. If possible, try not to separate the elbows. It's a main constraint we're using here to help bring the chest and bring the upper back into the movement. Now, as you're taking the elbows to the right, turning the head to the right, and it's almost like somebody's in your room up to the right, and you want to say hi to them, or you want to see them. Can you feel the way that the pelvis is rolling? Yeah, so let your pelvis turn. That's right. Good. Now, for a moment, if instead you wanted to look down and to the right, you wanted to see along the floor down towards your right heel. So you would take your arms and your head to the right, but your elbows would actually stay a little bit more over your chest. The hands would lead to the right. The top of the head would cover a greater arc over the floor. And just feel what that's like. Yeah, beautiful. Notice how your pelvis and pubic bone would move when you do this. If you were going to look down and towards your right foot. Great. Can you lead with your elbows again and look a little bit more upward? Go back to that variation. And when you do that, can you allow the belly to get long? Good. Rest, leave that alone. Let your arms come down. Let's actually keep the feet standing for a moment. Cross your left thigh over your right and slowly dip your knees to the left. And listen to how smoothly the cascade travels through your spine now. Notice the experience of the space between the shoulder blades. Can you feel that moment when the knees have traveled far enough that the ribs in your right armpit have some sensation, or the right shoulder could maybe hang back as your knees tilt to the left? Good. Come back to the middle with your legs and just switch the legs. Cross your right thigh over your left. Let your knees tilt a few times to the right. And notice if your ability to sense this rotation up the spine, up to that area of the spine between your scapula, if that's changed at all. And as you're tilting your knees, can you allow your pubic bone to lengthen a little bit? Can you feel the abdomen get a bit longer? Great. Okay, bring your legs back to the center, uncross, let your legs lengthen long. And just roll your head gently as you're resting here, just to see how you experience the spine now when you roll the head. Maybe you can feel how some ribs participate. Great. And let that rest and just bend your knees and stand your feet again. Roll your head to the left, leading with the top of the head. So we're going to explore in a similar way, going to the left. And first, we're just listening to these different ways of rolling the head to the left. So if you lead with the top of your head as you roll to the left, it's as though you want to look down maybe to see your left elbow. And your chin doesn't cover very much ground. And now roll your head to the left with your chin leading, as though you want to look to the left and a little bit upward. And even though I'm cueing you to move your head, can you sense how what's happening in your chest, in the area of the spine between the shoulder blades, could support these different places you might want to look, so that we don't have to do all the work in the neck? Good. Bring the head back to the middle. And slowly start to lift your arms. Let your hands start to approach each other. Let the fingertips touch, all 5 fingers meeting their sibling fingers. The palms come together. The inner elbows come together. Feel how the shoulder blades are wide. And just breathe here for a moment, feeling this space of your upper back on the floor. And begin to take your arms to the left. Notice what leads. Do your hands lead? Do your elbows lead? So you can see what spontaneously arises. can you allow your hands to lead to the left, turning your head to the left and looking a little bit downward like you'd like to see your left heel? And as you do that, feel the way that your pelvis rolls. If you allow your pelvis to roll, how would it roll to support that? Good. And then change. Now let your elbows lead, like you have that postcard between your elbows and you want to pass it to somebody that's to your left and perhaps a little above you. Seeing if you can take your face to the left, look a little bit upward. Allowing your pelvis to move. That's right. So you may find your knees tilting a little to the left. Great. Release that arm position. Come down. Let your legs lengthen for a moment. And with your legs long, could you very lightly lengthen your belly, lengthen your pubic bone, and perhaps even lifting your sternum just a little bit. And then you let it go. And try that again, lengthening your pubic bone, seeing if you can lighten or lift your sternum a little bit and feel how that activates your back when you lengthen your belly. Right now that your arms aren't in that position, the muscles in the chest don't have to be engaged. So you can sort of feel that freedom, that width in your chest. Good. Let that go. Bend your knees and stand your feet. Cross your left thigh over your right. And let your knees slowly start to tilt to the left, allowing your pubic bone to move a little away from your sternum, your abdomen to get long. See if you can let your right shoulder hang back. And as you tilt your knees, sense that cascade of movement, the rotation up your spine. Great. Okay, bring your legs back together. I'm just going to play with one last little thing here. So your left thigh is still crossed over your right. Bring your palms and your inner elbows to touch. And could you go slowly here, start to tilt your knees to the left and take your elbows a little to the left, looking upward and to the left so that you get longer in the front. Your knees and your elbows will slowly drift apart. There'll be more and more space between them. And try to do this without falling to the left. It's not an easy thing to do. And then you come back to the middle. You don't have to go all the way to the floor, to the left. So you might just go a few degrees, tilting the knees to the left, taking the elbows to the left, but let your knees come a little away from your elbows and your elbows go up away from your knees. So you feel the whole spine beginning to extend as you take the limbs to the left. That's right. And in order to come back to the middle, you're all finding this. You have to actually do the opposite, right? We're exploring spinal extension in this series, but it also means we're going to have to explore how to come back. So in order to return to your back, the knees and the elbows come back towards the middle. Your spine has to move in the direction of flexion. Great. Okay, let it all go. Let your legs lengthen, your arms come down. Feel the way that your back is distributed on the floor. Maybe the shoulder blades are a little bit more knowledgeable. Maybe you feel that space of your armpits differently. Good. When you're ready, roll to your side, come up to sit and come up to stand. And just be patient with yourself as you're coming up to stand. And see how your bones stand you up, what kind of character you have. As you come all the way into the vertical, take a moment to simply taste the way that your arms hang, the way that your shoulders hang. What's the sense of your upper back, your awareness of it, your sense of the length of your belly? Where do you sense your head in relation to your spine? And does your head feel light? Or does it feel heavy, like it's compressing, pushing down? And then open your eyes, take your eyes out to the horizon line, keeping your feet planted. Could you, again, rotate like we did at the beginning? Just rotate around yourself, turning your eyes, your shoulders, your chest, your pelvis as much as you'd like. And as you turn to look to one side of the room, feel how you steer this movement, perhaps from your armpits, your chest, your upper ribs. And notice how the shoulder blades slide over your back as you turn in one direction. And do you feel like you get taller as you rotate? Does your sternum elevate? Does your belly get longer? Or do things get shorter as you rotate? And you can play with that as you rotate to one direction. Think of lengthening your abdomen a little bit, lifting your sternum a little bit, and feel what that does to the world, as well as your ability to rotate and orient yourself. And then you could feel what it's like when you rotate and you shorten the abdomen and you drop the sternum. What does that do to how you orient to the world? Great. You could turn in one direction and look up towards the sky and see what that feels like. Great. And just let that go, walk a little bit and see how this affects your sense of the power of your walking, the way you feel your shoulder blades move as you walk. Great. Okay, thank you, everyone.